My dear friends, in this class we analyze chapter 18 of Matthew's Gospel, the community discourse, or we can even call it ecclesial discourse. Life within the Christian community should be as it is explained in this chapter. This is the fourth major discourse in the Gospel. Commonly, it is called the community or ecclesial discourse. While the earlier discourses focus on the ethics of the kingdom, mission, and the mysteries of the kingdom, this discourse concentrates on relationships within the Christian community. It addresses practical and spiritual questions concerning authority, humility, forgiveness, reconciliation, discipleship, and mutual care. Matthew's Gospel is the only Gospel that explicitly uses the term church, ecclesia, revealing its deep concern for the life and organization of Christian community. Matthew chapter 18 therefore serves as a guide for disciples who seek to live together according to the values of the kingdom of heaven. The chapter teaches us that greatness in the Christian community is measured not by power or status, but by humility, mercy, and loving responsibility towards the others. The discourse begins with a question from the disciples: who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? In response, Jesus places a child in their midst and declares that unless they change and become like children, they cannot enter the kingdom of God. In the ancient world, children possessed little social status or authority. Jesus therefore uses the child as a symbol of humility, dependence, simplicity, and openness to God. Greatness in the Christian community is not based on prestige or domination, but on humble service. This teaching radically challenges worldly attitudes towards leadership and honor. In the church, true authority must always reflect the humility of Christ Himself. Jesus further warns against causing little ones to stumble. The little ones may refer to the children and to vulnerable believers whose faith is weak or fragile. The community has a sacred responsibility to protect, support, and to nurture such persons. Any behavior that leads others away from faith becomes a serious offense before God. Thus, Matthew emphasizes that Christian life is inseparable from concern for the weak and defenseless. This concern for the vulnerable is beautifully illustrated in the parable of the lost sheep, verses 10 to 14. Jesus describes a shepherd who leaves 99 sheep in order to search for the one that has gone astray. The parable reveals the compassionate heart of God, who does not desire but even one person be lost? Who does not desire that even one person be lost? In Matthew's context, the Christian community may have struggled with division, failure, or members abandoning the faith under persecution. Jesus teaches that community must not neglect or condemn those who wander away. Instead, believers are called to imitate God's patient and merciful love by seeking reconciliation and restoration. Every member possesses dignity and value in the eyes of God. The church is therefore not merely an institution of rules and authority, but a community of care, healing, and pastoral concern. The discourse then addresses the difficult issue of fraternal correction, verses 15 to 20. Jesus outlines a process for dealing with a brother or sister who sins. First, correction should occur privately, preserving the dignity of the person. If the individual refuses to listen, one or two others may be involved as witnesses. Finally, the matter may be brought before the community. This process reveals an important principle of Christian life. Discipline within the church must always aim at reconciliation rather than punishment. The goal is not humiliation or exclusion, but conversion and restoration of communion. At the same time, Matthew recognizes that the community must preserve truth and moral responsibility. Christian love is not passive tolerance of wrongdoing. It includes the courage to correct one another in charity and humility. Jesus also promises that where two or three gather in His name, He is present among them. This assurance highlights that community life is grounded not merely in a human organization, but in the living presence of Christ. Decisions concerning reconciliation, discipline, and prayer are therefore sacred responsibilities carried out under divine guidance. One of the central themes of Matthew in chapter 18 is forgiveness. Peter asks Jesus how many times he must forgive a brethren who sins against him. As many as 7 times? Jesus responds, not 7 times, but 77 times, or 70 times 7, indicating a limitless forgiveness. This teaching is then illustrated through the parable of unforgiving servant, verses 23 to 35. A servant who has been forgiven an enormous debt refuses to forgive a fellow servant who owes him a much smaller amount. The king condemns the servant for failing to show the mercy he himself had received. The parable reveals that forgiveness lies at the heart of Christian existence. Since believers have received immeasurable mercy from God, they are called to extend mercy to others. A refusal to forgive contradicts the very nature of the gospel. Matthew's community likely experienced tensions, conflicts, and personal injuries, as every human community does. Jesus teaches that lasting communion is impossible without continual forgiveness. Forgiveness does not ignore justice or deny wrongdoing, but it breaks the cycle of hatred, revenge, and resentment. The discourse the ecclesial discourse ultimately presents an image of the church as a family shaped by humility, compassion, responsibility, and mercy. Leadership is expressed through service. The weak are protected and valued. Sinners are corrected with love. The lost are sought out. And forgiveness becomes the foundation of communal life. Matthew chapter 18, therefore, remains deeply relevant for the contemporary church. In a world often marked by competition, exclusion, polarization, and harsh judgment, Jesus calls his followers to build communities grounded in reconciliation and mutual care. The discourse reminds Christians that faith is never purely individualistic. To belong to Christ also means to belong to a community where members bear responsibility for one another's spiritual and human well-being. In conclusion, Matthew chapter 18 offers a profound vision of life within the Christian community. Through teachings on humility, care for the little ones, fraternal correction, and unlimited forgiveness, Jesus defines the essential values of the church. The discourse invites the believers to reflect the mercy and compassion of God in all relationships. A true Christian community is not identified primarily by structures or external success, but by its ability to embody the love, patience, and reconciling grace of Christ. Thank you for your patient listening. God bless you.